Persona 5 is probably the best JRPG I've ever played. It has such a unique take on the JRPG genre, and the story is really intriguing. I couldn't stop playing it for hours and hours on end. The game is brimming with a ton of style and charm. That's even apparent when navigating through the menus or purchasing equipment in the shop. It's incredible, really. Sometimes I would literally just play around in the menus to see a new animation or watch Joker do something cool. Even the loading screens never got old to me. The loading screen. Guys, come on, I'm gushing to you guys about the most boring part of the game, and I'm telling you, it never got old. And with Joker coming to Smash somewhat earlier this year, I'm here to convince more of you to experience his original debut, Persona 5. I was originally introduced to the Persona series with Persona 4, and what a game that was. The murder mystery that permeates and develops throughout the plot was enthralling, and I legitimately had no idea who the culprit could be. No spoilers in this video, I promise, but one thing the Persona series really had going for it was its intricacies in the plot. So, lo and behold, when Persona 5 was announced, I was ecstatic. I needed a new Persona game to sink my teeth into, and boy, Persona games are some meaty frickin' sandwiches, if you know what I'm saying. We're talking 80 to 90 hours of just the main story, and the game's going to practically force you to do other things and complete side quests. There's also a number of improvements that 5 made as someone who played Persona 4 first. The dungeons weren't as boring. In Persona 4, the dungeons were mainly just long hallways of the same thing, over and over, searching for stairs so that you could move on to the next floor. This got so tiring after having to do this with dungeon after dungeon after dungeon with barely any variation between each one. So the process was mostly run through the area, search for stairs, go up higher until you fight a mini-boss, continue upward until you fight the main boss for that dungeon. It can get pretty tedious going dungeon crawling in Persona 4. However, in Persona 5, many dungeons, or palaces in this case, are handcrafted this time around instead of being procedurally generated. I feel like this was a big word that was used back in the early 2000s-ish that made people want to buy games left and right, especially with how big of a selling point it was for Minecraft. There's still an area called Mementos that is procedurally generated and more in the vein of the Persona 4 dungeons, but I'm fine with that as the palaces are more than enough to entertain me, as Mementos was more something to explore on the side. To elaborate a bit more on the side activities the game provides you with, there's so much you can do here that Persona 5 really has to ease you into how its systems work. The first, 5 or 6 hours are mostly a tutorial/introductory phase of the game filled with cutscenes and not allowing you much freedom outside of the main story. So, the intro can be a little boring, I'm not gonna lie, but after getting over that initial hump, things really start to pick up. You play as Akira Kurisu, a high school student, and as a student, school takes up a lot of your time. After going to school, you could go to the batting cages, you could read a book, who's gonna do that? You could study, who's gonna do that also? You could make lockpicks, let's do that one. Taking on food challenges, hanging with your friends, hanging with your teacher, who's a maid, question mark, whatever, going fishing, making coffee, working out, and so much more. You can play video games in a video game. Screw the real game. I mean, what more could you guys want? This feature alone makes Persona 5 a 10 out of 10. On top of all those activities, you also have a responsibility of being a phantom thief. So you need to regularly go to the metaverse to level your characters and prepare for upcoming heists and forays into palaces, which are the handcrafted dungeons I mentioned earlier. Now, I'm not going to get into any specifics because I want this to be as spoiler-free as possible. But basically, just think a high school student simulator with some fantasy elements thrown in. It's pretty weird stuff. Also, good stuff, if you know what I'm saying. Anyway, all those activities I mentioned need to be properly managed, as you have deadlines to complete story-related objectives, else it's game over and the game will force you to do the previous week over or load from a previous save. Yeah, this game works on a calendar-based system, so you'll be going through Akira's life day by day, and you get to choose what activity you want to do each day accordingly. Side activities also increase stats outside of the stats that matter in battle, like charm, proficiency, intelligence, and so on. Certain activities on certain days may offer more of an increase in a particular stat, so you need to choose which activity to participate in on any given day wisely. And I mean, seriously, this game taught me some serious time management and decision making. It might as well have been a simulator to teach me these things, Jesus. Persona 5's approach to combat is also really unique. Similar to Pokemon, you can capture certain enemies and make them into your persona. Each persona has unique abilities and specific weaknesses that can be used to either exploit your enemies or cause your party to get wiped rather unexpectedly. If you hit an enemy with a type of attack that they're weak to, then you get an extra turn. But the catch is that this rule also applies to the player, and depending on what persona you have equipped, your strengths and weaknesses vary. This is a really cool system due to how many different persona you can capture, and you can even fuse them into a better, stronger persona for use in battle. Don't forget about all-out attacks, which you can perform once all enemies have been knocked down by either hitting them with their respective weakness or getting a critical hit. There's also a fast forward feature during battle to speed things up a bit if you want the fight to go by a bit quicker, although I rarely used it. If it's one thing that all these mechanics have in common, it's that these features serve to quicken the pace of the battle significantly, and I think that's why Persona's battle system stacks up much better against your typical turn-based JRPG. It's just like why people thought Bravely Default was good. Both games take a traditional turn-based battle system and put their own unique spin on it. Also, unlike most other JRPGs, there are no random encounters. You get into battles by encountering shadows when running around in palaces or mementos, and avoiding these enemies can actually be very difficult, which I'm totally fine with. With other JRPGs, if they take the approach to having enemies in the overworld, it's really just too easy to simply avoid them. But in Persona 5, you have to use the cover system and stealth to be able to sneak past some of the enemy encounters. Then there's also the ability to ambush your enemies. You need to approach the enemy undetected using the cover system, or quickly dash up behind them to execute an ambush, which results in this really cool animation where you rip the mask off the shadow's face and automatically transition into battle. But on the flip side of that, if you're caught from behind trying to run away from an enemy, you're the one that could get ambushed, and this can be extremely punishing if the enemy is able to hit you with your weakness, as like I said before, they get more turns on top of ambushing you if this happens. So there's a real need for stealth and to pick and choose your fights carefully, as the dungeons can be very lengthy, and SP, which is essentially your MP in this game, can't be recovered until your next foray into the palace, save for some expensive SP recovery items that you'll really want to be using sparingly. SP is your lifeline in mementos in the palaces, so there's always a sense of excitement when deciding whether to risk continuing on in a dungeon or whether to head to a safe room to log your progress and safely exit the dungeon. And oh my god, the music in this game. Every single soundtrack in this game is a jam that takes me away to my happy place. Just one listen to that battle theme and
you'll never see it come back.
The soundtrack has a good mix of jazz and rock, with jazz just getting me to snap my fingers and getting used to going along with that smooth, stylistic element the game has, and rock being used to get you pumped up and ready to fight the major bosses of the game. You know a soundtrack is good when you still listen to it, even after beating the game years ago. Honestly, not too much of a surprise though, the Persona series has always had a spectacular soundtrack. The environments and world building in Persona is just fantastic. The city feels alive as you go from destination to destination. You You receive texts in class from your friends, having different conversations on different days. There's really a lot of attention to detail here. The characters are all also extremely likable. I don't want to go into too much detail because spoilers, but Ryuji's antics always put a smile on my face, and you really make a connection with Joker and his friends. The voice acting in Persona 5 is also very well done, and definitely help make the characters feel alive. I mean, sometimes I'd be asked by like one of my real life friends to go out and do something. I'd just be like, nope, my boy Ryuji needs a gym partner for the day. Sorry, Nick. All in all, one of my favorite games of all time and a joy to experience. If you haven't played the game for yourself already, hopefully this video has convinced you to make that jump and experience this gem for yourself. It is available on PS3 and PS4, so you're doing yourself a disservice if you don't play this game if you own either of those consoles. Anyway guys, make sure to subscribe or the Phantom Thieves will end up stealing your heart next.